All right. Welcome to the very first edition of Touch the Designer, which is my new podcast that focuses on the artists and creators of Touch Designer and new media art. But for now, it's really going to be focused on Touch Designer, and my intention is really to kind of show more of the artists and the person behind the Instagram name or YouTube channel, whatever it is. So, the developers of Touch Designer. And I'm delighted to have you as my very first guest. So I
Mm,
welcome both of you,
Thank you
Greg
very
and
much.
Isabel.
we're on the maiden
Yeah.
voyage.
Yeah. And I was wondering what the name was and Touch the Designer. It's perfect. That's why
Yeah.
I chuckled a bit, but it's really good. Thank you. Thanks for letting us in.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's lovely to have you here. So I would like to start this off by you giving a quick insight into your roles at Derivative. So what exactly are you doing at Derivative?
I'll go first. So I'm generally managing the company day to day. It's a big job in itself, but also, fortunately, I'm also a designer of new parts of Touch Designer along with other members of the team. And I particularly like being in what we call the Touch Designer test department because it means I'm trying to make new experimental tools with stuff that's coming out of R&D, breaking things, helping redesign things, troubleshooting things, bashing it around. And a bunch of us at Derivative do that. But like just testing new things and trying to build new experimental tools is kind of a quite a interesting part of the job too.
Would you call yourself the CEO?
Yeah, it depends who I'm talking to. Yeah, to lawyers, yeah,
Okay.
I say CEO,
I
but
see. I see.
to my friends, it's like test department.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. And you, Isabel?
Well, I do the other things. I joined the team in around 2008. And at the time, it was to find and write about a growing body of touch designer work that was happening in the community. At the time, the community was a lot smaller. And all this work intrigued me a great deal. So since that point on, I've been really engaged with the community, sort of getting to know people, what they're working on, what they need, what they want, who to connect, that sort of thing. Also, I guess I started our social media shortly after that. So promoting Touch Designer through the work of the community on socials and then the more in-depth interviews for the showcase. And then also Marcus and I doing the in-session streams, which we
Right.
have to pick up on again. And then the other part I really enjoy is organizing the events. So, smaller meetups around the world and TD summits and so on.
Yeah.
Busy.
Yeah, seems like it. Both of you. All right. So, how are you doing currently? And I don't just want to hear good.
Ah, terrible. No, I mean,
Gee.
not good. Really good. Busy, very, very busy. I don't know about you, but it seems that progressively the end of the year gets busier and busier. And now it seems that the beginning of the year also gets busier and busier. So heard a lot of people say that January was a long year or a long Monday. And it's all good, but there's been the sense that so much has happened in the first month of the year. So,
Yeah, and
which,
like for like looking at kind of 2023, like for us, it kind of a year blossoming out. Like our learning platform came out at learn.derv.ca, and we found like a lot of growth in our user base in kind of Asia and Europe and kind of in the far reaches and the main parts of those continents. So it was really kind of nice to see kind of more interest in touch designer kind of everywhere. So I mean, that's been happening every year, but it's really, really blossomed out last year. So
yeah, there's even a book coming out in Malaysian,
Oh, wow.
first Malaysian touch designer book. So yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I'd say similarly, just 2023. See, we pushed back a year there, Billiam. Um,
Hmm.
we had after pandemic, we had our first meetup again, like our first kind of larger community event in Berlin, and then Roy and Tim did one in Amsterdam, which was really good. So that felt very much needed, the gathering physically of community.
Yeah, that would have been my question, kind of what was the last year like for you? Because for me personally, it was one of the most difficult ones ever. So yeah, I'm curious
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
that was like
totally.
for you. Yeah, but
We were
you,
lucky. I
yeah,
think we were really lucky because um, I mean, I think it caught everybody totally unprepared, right? I mean, I had masks and I had gloves, but I had no real idea how to deal with confinement or, the end of work as we knew it, that sort of
hmm
thing, the end of social interaction as we knew it. And we were super worried about our community, right? Because of the kind of work that we're involved in, the very sort of public interactivity and COVID.
right,
Or
yeah,
pandemic, right? Um, so I guess 23 was recovering from that. And I think our community always kind of really sort of surprises you in a good way, kind of overachieving
right.
in many ways. Why was it hard for you?
Because I had long COVID and I
Oh,
was pretty
yeah.
much sick most of last year, like
Mm,
70% of last year. I was just sick and very, very badly sick.
Yeah.
So
mm,
for me
Wow.
now, this year is recovering from that. So I
Yeah.
didn't really have much time to recover from the pandemic, but
mm,
like I just got sick very badly. And so yeah, I'm now kind of in the process of coming back into work and into like having a life again
Yeah.
after, years of
yeah,
pandemic and then year and a half of being sick. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but 2024
No,
looks good so far. It's
looks
promising for
brighter.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Much
How
better.
how do you cure long COVID?
You don't really. You just
You don't.
wait. There's nothing you can do really. You
yeah.
just wait it out. And yeah, try to rest as much as you can. But yeah, it
Mhm,
seems like
mhm.
it's pretty much over for me now, which
Good.
I'm very glad about. Yeah, kind of talking about the pandemic, it's generally I feel like a topic that people don't really like talking about anymore, or it kind of seems, like that's been ages ago. But I'm curious, like how you dealt with that and how has that influenced the way you work now in your team personally and also with the community.
Yeah, like our team all went home and now they're back again. Um, we learned to be pretty effective in working remotely anyways, because at Derivative, we're kind of becoming more and more spread out. Like we have developers in Scotland, New York City, Oregon, Kyoto, New York. So we're already pretty spread out. So it just kind of reinforced our way of working together remotely and over Slack and now Notion and stuff like that. So it's pretty it's really it really reinforced our way of working remotely and didn't hurt us that much. But being back together at the office, like we're having a meetup in a week, a training session, and we're really looking forward to any form of human contact. It's great to kind of hang out together again because so much happens when you're in person that is like just incidental and then much less prepared and like there seems to be a lot of nuances that you just don't experience with social media platforms.
For
Right.
sure. And I kind of jumped ahead in answering the pandemic question in the 2023. See, that's how much time has
Mm-hmm.
gotten confusing. But yeah, I agree with what Greg was saying. I also think we were really lucky. We were lucky with our community. The fact that we had the tools that we have and we're developing for, all the live streaming. I started on the Derivative website a running document, live streams while flattening the curve, or I can't remember what I called it, but just all the live streams and all the online things that happen. So even though it doesn't replicate getting together in person, it definitely, kind of bridged a big empty void. And it also brought out kind of the international nature of the touch designer community, the fact that, so our schedules were all sort of twisted around, but you could be up at 4 o'clock in the morning and one or two people somewhere were there to, talk touch designer or whatever. So, yeah, I think it was, definitely some positive things came from it, like a lot of R&D. A lot of people, when you ask for their origin story, and it's like, oh, during pandemic, I got to work, or I started making tutorials, or
yeah, totally. I feel that. I was kind of the same for me. I pretty much, I mean, I started before, but I made this beginner course in the beginning of the pandemic, and that really, like, a lot of things happened, and a lot of people had time to sit down to actually learn at home. So for me, it was actually in a way beneficial.
And so many people talk about what you posted and what they're learning from that you produce. So no, it was really, really well received.
this
I'm
is
very
true,
glad to
William.
hear that.
Your name comes up a great deal. Like you must blush from time to time for no reason.
Now I know what it is. Yeah. Yeah, and also like about the, global community, I really feel that also with the meetups and also my Patreon meetups, it's kind of hard to find times, right? Because people are like in New Zealand and in, I don't know, Canada or whatever. So it's like they're all over the globe, and it's not easy to get them all together at one time, actually. But it's also great to see.
Especially now that we're back at work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
All right, I want to move even further into the past, and kind of I'm curious where you really like come from, what you did before touch designers. So what did you learn or study before you actually moved to touch designer or creating touch designer? Did you go to university, or is there anything that comes up, like a tool or a software that especially you, Greg, spend a lot of time with in your youth, maybe in your 20s, or
So yeah, I went to art school twice, William, twice.
Oh, wow.
First time I studied filmmaking, and turned out to be more experimental filmmaking. So artist film, even though I studied filmmaking techniques. And the second time I studied industrial design, so product design. And then both times, I really enjoyed my studies, and I really enjoyed the processes. But both times I realized that I was actually less into making things and more into sort of curating, organizing events like film screenings and experiences. When I graduated the first time from my film studies, I did this project called Film Trek. And so it was the idea, I got a bunch of grants, actually. I worked really hard on this project. And then I curated a program of films, experimental artist films from across Canada, and designed an outdoor projection system and got a vehicle that was like pretty dodgy. But we basically drove around the province of Ontario to kind of like the more the country settings, the outskirts, and did these outdoor film screenings showing people these kind of crazy films. So that was kind of pretty formative. So yeah, just basically it's been more process for me, like of discovering things and making connections, and always sort of learning and trying to synthesize what I learned to find some meaning and hopefully some social value.
All right. Yeah, we're going to be talking a bit about more about your role at Touch Designer and how you came to that. So Greg, you wanted to kind of talk about the next question in combination with the question I just asked. So what did you think you would do later? What was kind of a childhood dream? And then maybe, what did you study or learn? How did you come about doing Touch Designer?
Yeah, so which with a lot of people and kids, curiosity in my life is a big driver. I mean, I actually liked learning math, physics, and science in school, and psychology. That's what I specialized in university. But like, and I feel very comfortable in that environment. But I also was very interested on what we make as a culture and as art or technology, and very interested in what people get off on culturally, like music and art being so fluid. Like styles of music and art change so fast. So like there's so much novelty to it. So I was always kind of gravitating towards kind of understanding that. Um, and I was also concerned about generally the well-being of people, and traveling a lot and trying to connect the dots somehow with all those kind of interests. Concerned about environment and all that kind of stuff right from early time. So what I'm doing now is kind of a culmination of a lot of that. Like since I was around 25, I always wanted to create tools for artists as a result. And like at one point in time when the game Pong came out, I had access to a digital equipment PDP-11 mini computer, and I programmed Pong on it. So like that's kind of like early software development, because computers or mainframe computers were just coming out around my university years. I'd done some pattern recognition software for psychology and stuff like that. So it's a lot of my own coding that I was more intrigued by. But after that, I had the chance to work on like a real-time aircraft simulators just after university at CAE Electronics in Montreal. This is for training pilots. And then while there, I had the opportunity to work on a simulator and design machine, real-time simulator design machine for the American space shuttle, the robot arm part of the space shuttle. And so, which is where I got a lot of experience with just designing user interfaces, doing experiments, human factors experiments and stuff like that. So it was really a lot of stuff in the engineering world that I had good experience with before I got into doing stuff for artists. But anyhow, that was kind of the early years. But like through university and after, I really was intrigued by experimental films of the 1960s, 1970s, like filmmakers like John Whitney, um, 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 Norman McLaren, Canadian filmmaker, Michael Snow, Harry Smith. These are obscure names, and so on. So, like, I always looked at this experimental films. This stuff is usually pretty abstract and kind of out there, and I was always also looking at a lot of special effects in popular movies. But I was wondering, like, oh, if I had a computer, how would I make all those things with a computer? Like, what do I need? I need to get pictures in. I need to be able to manipulate them. In many cases, working things with your hands directly was really easier. But what happens if you want to use a computer to make things? What becomes easier and what becomes harder? So anyway, all this kind of stuff influenced me at the time. Like, and another thing that really influenced me too was being able to fool around with electronic music synthesizers, because like was able to get my hands on Synthy, ARP 2600, Moog, few others just to goof around with, and I just found the whole paradigm of plugging things together and getting crazy sounds out really intriguing. And again, it's like, okay, what if we transform that idea into the world of computer graphics? So, that led to a lot of stuff.
We can see that now. Yeah, it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. It's lovely to hear that, and it makes a lot of sense that it's so versatile, because TouchDesigner feels so versatile now, and you can see all these different influences. And I think that's also
Yeah.
kind of the cool thing about TouchDesigner, that it attracts so many different people, right? Like engineers or programmers, and at the same time musicians and designers, because you're
Yeah.
also, and your team is interested in all of these different parts, and that's coming
Yeah.
all together, and then also attracting all of these different people.
Yeah. That has always been the hope, is to attract people to the software who are diverse. The musicians and the engineers and the students, old people, young people, but also people doing data visualization and more scientific things and more engineering things. Yeah, so it was like it was that was always the hope to kind of unify many communities of minds and people who are very art centric as well, versus and people are just using After Effects and common 3D software tools. I mean, that's all part of the mix too. But but then trying to make a software product that everybody is happy with is the huge challenge.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've kind of already answered the question, what inspired you, but like nowadays, what's something that really drives you to continue making the software apart from making money, obviously? Yeah,
Hang on a
Isabel?
sec. I haven't answered that question.
Yeah, let's get over to Isabelle too
Sure.
to answer that
Sure,
question.
sure.
And then
No,
you can ask
because-
about the music relation.
Yeah.
Because I really like that question actually, and I went way back. And like I started thinking, I was like, oh man, it's been such a long time. That's a bad sign. But sure, I wanted to be a vet and I wanted to be a lawyer and fight for people. But then I realized one dream that was very consistent through almost to adolescence was that I thought I'd be a really, really good spy. Like I really like this idea of discovery and uncovering. And I started thinking about that. And part of the reason I think was when I was a child, we moved a great deal. Like, I was born in Mauritius, moved to South Africa, moved to Canada, and in all those places moved around a lot. So I never had that kind of community and grounding. And, I mean, I loved school. I loved learning by myself or, independently or at school. But it wasn't until I really hit art school that I kind of realized that like all these ideas that seemed unattainable were actually the best ideas to kind of work on and think about. And so I kind of see it very much also as to making sense with what I'm currently doing. Okay, back to Greg.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah, and another thing was the kind of the influence of kind of music on my career, myself, and what we make. My father was a professional accordionist, so having that around as a child was like a pretty influential. But like, and I also had the luxury of going to Expo '67 because in that year it was in Montreal, and I saw stuff that was actually mind blowing at the time, but even now. So there were theaters, Kodak Theater with 360-degree projections with floors that moved underneath you. That was made by Disney for Kodak for Expo '67, and other cinemas that were strange configurations of screens around, above, below, thin screens. Other theater where it was like performance plus film projections onto weird shapes. We call that projection mapping, and with nonlinear storytelling. I mean, this was all happening at that time as experimental things, and that's also where I got my first hand on a music synthesizer. I didn't even know what the word synthesizer was, but there was a machine made by Hewlett Kane, a National Research Council researcher here in Canada, who had a rack of knobs and switches and stuff like that. You put headphones on, and you made all these kooky sounds. Like, okay, that's another thing that just came upon myself then. So I was kind of lucky to get to experience that as a kid. And then 1969 came around, and the year of Woodstock and stuff. But I had chosen to go down to Newport Jazz Festival instead. And the first thing I saw there was Sun Ra, jazz musician, playing with his band with a light show behind him made by the Joshua Light Show of New York / San Francisco, I guess. And it was one of those liquid light shows where they put the oils on thing and project behind the band. So that was another thing that got me really excited about visual with sound. Um, and a few years later, I had an opportunity I got very interested in Balinese gamelan music because of its non-vocal nature and weird instruments and weird scoring and stuff like that. So I went to Bali around 1980, and
I'm going there in 5 days.
yeah. Oh, you're going there in 5 days? Okay, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Check it out.
A lot. Yeah, so I got a chance to see shadow puppet plays in Bali, and to me, I call it. Then I ended up calling it like the original television because it was a rectangular white screen, light source from behind, puppets that were thrown up on the screen by a puppeteer behind the screen, audiences out there running around screaming, kids, family, all night thing, and the puppeteer live performance of with his hands, his feet vocal. He had clickers in his toes. He had a band behind him, like the gamelan orchestra behind him, and it was all kind of like this thing that generated to tell stories of the Hindu Ramayana, I think it's called. And so, that was live performance by puppeteer with music, and it was all somewhat improvised. And so that was like a really cool thing to have seen in the like at that age as well. So, and then after that, being more and more academic, Computer Music Journal was a magazine that was around, still around, I think, but I had subscribed to it, and I learned so much about digital music at that time, which preceded ideas and user interfaces and concept in computer graphics by 5 or 10 years. So it was like really super influenced by all that stuff. So there's a lot of music in the past as well.
And kind of coming back to that question of like what drives you now to continue working on TouchDesigner with this community.
A lot of people use the software so well, it would be really terrible to stop. So I mean, it's
yeah,
I don't know, just seeing what people are making with it is always so surprising. There's all these moments of like, whoa, right? I didn't see that coming. Or, something is just so well done that but there's more to it.
I'm sure that must be amazing to see what all these people come up with and use it in really like large scale shows and installations and stuff. I'm sure that must be gratifying as well.
Yeah. Even for every project that we see, which is interesting, I'll usually brings with it more questions about what next, or what could we have provided that would make their work easier. So it's always, we're always in a state of kind of analysis, and we get so much amazing input from our user community. We come out from meetings and just conversations with reams of notes and we try and distill them into, what do we do next, and prioritize the things and stuff. So there's no shortage of what next, and the super gratifying part is seeing what people make with TouchDesigner. I mean, that's super what drives us.
All right. So I'm curious, when you're working on creating and developing TouchDesigner, what are sort of the main challenges, and how has that changed over the years?
A couple of things. It's big challenge is to make one tool for on the one side, very technical users who are making large, complex systems with Python and all that, at the same time as you're making the same tool for casual doodlers who want to make interesting stuff with not too much effort and not too much thinking, and everything in between, people doing real gigs for earning their income, but also people who are learning stuff in school, or making things for just pure experimental art purposes. So that's kind of like a really, really difficult challenge for us in designing user interface, and also even designing user interfaces. Just even a lot of our design choices of what to put where, and trying to keep things consistent for users, like consistent visually, and making things consistent inside TouchDesigner, because even keep having common terminology for parts of the system and not having overlapping terminology and conflicting ones, parameter names, making them kind of consistent with each other. It's like we spend a lot of like extra time kind of going over consistency in touch. So that's extremely, because as the software gets more complex, you don't want it to get too much more complex for your users. You want them to be familiar with concepts when you go from one operator family to another, or one operator to another. So we spend a lot of time on consistency in TouchDesigner as well. Fine tuning what parameters do, and like when we make new nodes, like we always have to think of, that node, let's say Bloom in the recent thing, how it's used in context of other tools, and how much, if you design parameters a certain way, then it becomes more flexible to be used in other ways for more unexpected things. So the parameter design is a big deal. So internally, we review our designs of things amongst our tech staff first, just to try things out on each other. And we do a lot of revisions and converging to what comes out to our users in the end. And then once the stuff gets out there, we then make even further changes and iterations if we find that something is not cool or something should be better. So, but we try and do a lot of due diligence before we release stuff. So, those are big challenges of software dev amongst everybody in our team.
Right. There's going to be a few more questions for you, Greg, and we're going to come back to you, Isabelle.
That's totally fine.
So like how has the computing power and technical development influenced TouchDesigner, as it's also real-time software? It's so dependent on the machine that it's running. I'm curious, how has that changed, and how has that influenced how you develop it?
Well, obviously you have well, machines are cheaper. You have more of them. Actually, doing multi-machine systems is now easier than it has been before, and definitely GPUs have exploded in their capability. So actually, using the GPU more and more is like essential, as well as we are doing and plan to do. The thing that's really hit us the most over the last 10 years is the like extreme variety of input devices that are now available with for TouchDesigner. And you started off with MIDI controllers, and that was great. I mean, and then open sound control to open things up a bit more, and then the network protocols, which then opened things up even further, and then Connect came out, and in RealSense, and a whole bunch of other things that came and went over the years, and just kind of keeping up with all the devices that come out, just writing drivers for it and working with vendors, and then the many video like the video card suppliers, which have been really helpful to us to try and get good high quality SDI video out to lots of screens and stuff. So, and there's, NDI was really a blessing too, because it was a good protocol that served a lot of people well. And the fact that a lot of devices now come with Python APIs, so people can work with other devices and protocols without much help from us. So, Torn Blankensmith systems and stuff like that would not happen if there was not a good Python infrastructure around. So, that's all that stuff is kind of a flood to us, but we're trying to, pick the things that we think that would be most beneficial, that would be hardest to support. Like there's WebRTC now for streaming between 2 points, any 2 points to multiple points. Between different software tools, and like that's almost impossible for someone to do on their own. It's a real convoluted mess inside. So we take it on to develop WebRTC. But there's more to come. What's next?
Yeah.
I don't know sometimes, but it's all kind of always refreshing, and our users always ganging up on us on plus oneing what people are suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine it's already difficult as a user to keep up with all the stuff that's happening, but you as a
Yeah,
developer kind of sort of having to keep up with it even more. I bet that's super difficult, especially now, like with all the AI stuff. We're gonna talk a bit
yeah.
about that later on, but I mean, there's
Mm,
just so much coming out like every month. It's really hard to keep track of. So I'm sure that
yeah,
that's really not easy for you as well.
yeah. Nor for you as well. And also, in you guys developing your own tools with TouchDesigner, it's kind of a moving target as well because every year our best practices change a little bit. You know, we had custom parameters, and then we have parent shortcuts, and then using parameters instead of the constant shop, and then you know, there's always something new that you need to look at when you're redesigning your tools because I find that you know we even at derivative we don't follow our own best practices yet, so we have to establish them and figure what they are, but then put it out, but then it takes years for sometimes those to appear in the tools that our users make. So you know that's it's really a moving target.
So you kind of already said, Greg, but like I'm curious both what is sort of the most difficult part to work on. I mean, you've already talked about main challenges, but maybe there's something specific. And even more, I'm curious what's your personal favorite part of TouchDesigner to develop?
Well, you know, you're asking what are favorite bits and pieces of TouchDesigner. I come at it from different points. One is like you know, there was in at the beginning, the first aha was even something like the trigger chop, which is like, okay, you push a button and you get a signal out. Great.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to code anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then math chop being so prevalent everywhere and just being able to do a lots of simple math without any coding. So it's like, okay, that was like a had far-reaching effects. And then you know, years later, timer chop, we developed that because actually we developed because the special effects, the shots in the movie Gravity were done by Bot and Dolly on site with TouchDesigner running cameras, driving robot cameras, lighting cues, video feeds, sound cues, and so on. And the TouchDesigner network for doing that was about 200 nodes, a total 100% mesh. And I was quite happy that they were able to do it, but I realized that we needed one node that did all of that efficiently. So all that functionality went boiled down into one thing. So I feel pretty happy about us addressing a lot of timing issues with one node. So I love this loss of functionality in one node type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you know, like we one thing which I thought one if we didn't have DATs, I don't know where we would be because we designed them around 2008 at round table, throwing ideas of what if what if we had nodes where we could put text in it and we can combine them procedurally and put tables in them and manipulate them with networks of operators. Like it was a kind of a crazy idea. What if we could put our scripts, oh, not in external files, but in these nodes where we can edit them and splice things together. It was kind of a novel thing that we took a chance on, and I don't know what we would do without them. You know, we were putting all our shaders in them and JSON and input output stuff and database searches, all of our web queries. I mean, I don't know what we'd do without DATS as a family. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
hard
really
to
happy that
imagine without dads now.
yeah, and it's a really unique feature in the industry. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know of anything like it. So and we have improvements that we make and can make. I mean, just the recent stuff for in the table that just building out tables right there without using extra nodes. I mean, there's always more things that we're adding to that. But that was one part of the product that I feel very happy that we took a chance on.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. So one last question for now. What's your favorite or most used, most important operator? One specific one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's still the timer for me, even though it's ironic because I'm always late for things. So I don't know why. I don't know
Oh, it's
why
so
that I'm picking
ironic.
that one. So, but kind of that's the one I've had and with all of its callbacks, and that's kind of it was quite fun making it and using it in different applications. So I don't know. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, noise this," and feedback was the one that kind of we thought we put in almost not thinking about it. And says, "Oh yeah, we want something from the last frame. Make a feedback, got a loop, put it in." I thought nobody would find it or use it, and it's used almost in everybody's
That's so good.
learning projects. So
yeah. It's
yeah,
honestly one of my favorite things about TouchDesigner, creating feedback loops, because it's just endless exploration. It's amazing.
Yeah. So that was kind of a surprise hero node. And we'll make it better, and we'll make it generally better for doing feedback. So we're not done with that.
That's great to hear. All right, so I think we can move a little away from the kind of technical aspect and move more into the community, because I think that's so crucial about TouchDesigner. So this community around it. So Isabelle, you're working a lot with the community. How did you come to work at Derivative, and what do you really like about your job?
Wow. What do I like about my job? I get to work with an incredible team, like internal team working with Derivative. It's a really privileged experience, and it's fun. Working with the community, I love. It's just I feel very close. I feel like they're extended family. I mean, when we meet at events like the summit or events where there's 100 or more of us, and I just feel, you know, I have this thing that I always do, and it's like if things went south, something terrible happened, these are the people that I want to be with, because they're I've sort of come up with a psychological profile of a touch designer person, and they're very generous. They're very independent. They're able to work alone. They're very collaborative as well. They can work together. They're not afraid of breaking things, of taking them apart, of putting them back together. So they've got a lot of range, and there's not these big egos, So so that's really nice. I get to see really emerging forms of art and technology, and again, sort of, these crazy things that people end up doing. Um, I've been saying lately that the community is part of the software, if that makes sense, right? Because they're so integral to what we do, what we do next in many cases. And they're almost like our living kind of blue sky environment, right? Like Greg and I were talking about this the other day during my employee review, but they very much are kind of just hacking out these things that we don't expect, right? Greg, you unmuted. Did you want to pipe in here?
Yeah. We were talking about, let's do a blue sky event, and it's like, wait a second. Isabelle said, wait a second. That's our living community. That's our blue sky event. It's happening now. We get all the future thinking and ideas from what our users are trying to do and are doing. So like we just need to draw upon that.
Yeah, it's a question I think that just fits super well to that. What do you think? Like, how do you think the community shapes the software?
In a bunch of ways, actually. In many ways, the community builds what we haven't built and then shares it. And we also get, a lot of design ideas from prototypes that our users make for us. So it's not just community telling us what to do or suggesting it. It's like they make it, and of course they make it, and they make bridges to other products. But that's a huge and another way that the community shapes it is when we look at their projects, the structure of how they make things. It's sometimes apparent what we need to do next in order to make certain things easier. So yeah, there's lots of workarounds that people used, or things that they haven't discovered yet in the software. So when I see things that are kind of a little bit lacking or could have been done a different way, sometimes I contact the user and say, hey, why don't you try this? But a lot of that turns into snippets in our palette, snippets in TouchDesigner. So now there's like 1,000 of them. Many of them are created because I saw certain things that people did that maybe needs explanation or a better way of doing things. So it comes into us in different forms, but it goes out in software features and things that we put in palette and snippets and stuff like that. So yeah, so the influence is from a lot of directions.
I see.
And especially as the community grows in different fields, right? Before it used to be just mostly VJs, but now TouchDesigner is being used in so many varied fields, and people are coming at it with, it needs to do something else. We were talking to someone last week who's doing some research in Japan at Keio University, and he said, oh, basically that TouchDesigner sort of lets you connect things you didn't know needed to be connected. So if people are working that way, it leads to a lot of unknown unknowns, or
Right. So from what you see in the world of TouchDesigner, how do you see that in relation to modern art or design in general?
Well, it's definitely nice in the last especially the last 10 years or so, I'd say, to see so much digital work, in big museums and galleries, right? And that there's this entire industry around sort of ensuring the availability of the technical equipment that we need to make these arts of work displayable or playable. So that's kind of one. But again, just things sort of change and develop so quickly, right? I mean, it's just the breadth and scope of what you see, I think it's on par with, especially coming from our community, it's definitely on par with what you see in sort of the bigger art and design world.
Yeah. I mean, especially now with AI and stuff, it's really on the very front of what's happening with TouchDesigner. You can really feel that. A lot of feels like pioneering work, a lot of what's happening around the TouchDesigner community.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of two questions in one, I guess. So, Greg, you've already touched upon that a bit. What were some of the aha moments in the evolution of TouchDesigner? But also, you mainly focused on the sort of development side of things, and I'm also curious about the community part of things, and also generally, like, how has the community developed over the years? And just looking at my own, like, from my own experience, I've been in the community now for like 4 or 5 years, and it's already changed a lot since then. And there's a bunch of new people that have joined the community like now there's so many people doing tutorials. When I started, it felt like there were like a handful. So yeah, I'm curious how that has changed over the entirety of TouchDesigner's life.
When I joined in 2008, the community was really small. As I said, there were a handful of people, it felt like, in the US, some people in Europe, like in Germany. There was Andrew Quinn. I mean, I can literally on two hands kind of, name them. There was a lot of VJ work going on, visuals for music. One thing that I found is regardless of how many people, whether it's 2008 or today, what sort of remains consistent is that in our community, there's always these people that kind of come forward and make themselves known, either not necessarily by making really, really interesting and beautiful work, very often also by making tutorials, engaging with the community, creating a place for meetups and workshops and that sort of thing. So typically we've really noticed people like that because they end up sort of really, it's kind of like a punctuated events when you look at, in like however large our community base is. I've made it, I have a list and there's people missing on this list for sure. But there's all these kind of, like, you could call them stars, who kind of come in and, so there was Andrew Quinn and then Richard Burns. Like, he was this young kid, 20, I have the date. What date was it? 2013 or something like that. He was this young kid at Northumbria University in Newcastle in the UK, and he was making these TouchDesigner tutorials, from his bedroom and in this great British accent. So we contacted him and brought him to Toronto, and he kind of made our first, TouchDesigner tutorials. Then there's a whole bunch of people, like, I don't want to name them all, but maybe I'll give you a like I'll make a diagram. But obviously Matthew Reagan,
that was one of my
and
personal most influential people in the beginning, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. He kind of sort of revolutionized, I think, the whole process of learning TouchDesigner and teaching, and he was so prolific. Elbers and the HQ, that was a huge,
that was a huge boost to the professional community. Still is, and better than ever. So that was the one when he came on, started doing production, and he realized, oh, people need to learn this stuff. I'm learning it this way. I'm gonna want to start to teach how to use TouchDesigner in a more professional way. So it was a great step aside for Elbers, going from kind of high-end production video systems to leading
having a school.
IIHQ.
Yeah. And also, of course, Stefan Kraus and the team at the Node Institute, right? They've done a absolutely amazing job in the community of organizing these, the beginner workshops and the intermediate workshops and these programs and the Berlin Roundtable. Of course, Stanislav and his How to Touch, and he's also got his whole learning path and teaching a lot of people. And then, as you say, right, I mean, then there was sort of a newer generation of Paqueta and yourself and Wieland, and of course there was TDS, TouchDesigner Study Weekend in Japan. I mean, the Japanese community grew by leaps and bounds through the work of Yuki Narumi and some of the other people that put on all these great workshops. And and if you go to alltd.org, which I did this morning, just looking at this, some people have only done one tutorial, but some content creators have, 20, 30, 100. So that's so in terms of, for me, like the in terms of how the community has developed, like, it's in the same way over and over again, but more definitely as more people use the software, we have more people obviously making teaching
content.
And tool makers, like, Daniel Molnar and Keith Lestracco was an early tool maker, people who actually, again, with so much generosity, share their, intellectual property, right? It's like, yeah.
So we should go through the aha moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were the aha moments in the evolution of TouchDesigner?
Aha moments.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, remember Phil Ranieri, real grassroots project. He had a Connect, one of the early ones. He had his two hands. He had some DMX lights, and he stuck his hands in the air and pointed his hands around and moved the lights. And that was just amazing. He glued together a couple of really simple off-the-shelf technologies, and just did this live movement of moving headlights. So when we saw that video, we just keep on showing to people, going, "Oh, it really a lot of it started in that end of it, the interactive part, without MIDI controls, but using your hands in space."
Yeah, DMX lights, and he did the same thing with lasers. And I think it was pre-Instagram, and it just, if it had been in, if we'd had Instagram by then, I think it would have, even if things would
Blown
have
up.
moved even further along. But it was just this hand directing light, and then he did it with lasers. And then
Yep.
there's a whole bunch of things that
Yeah. So
Todd Moyer's uh, moving sculpture with projection mapping. So Todd
yeah,
Moyer for Electric Daisy Carnival built CNC this incredible massive caterpillar sculpture, which people at the festival twirled around. So it was moving, and at the same time, there was projection mapping on the caterpillar, which
yeah, three projectors projecting on a rotating caterpillar, large scale, at some festival in EDC festival in the States. So that to me ties so much together, moving sculpture, hand moved, projection mapping, fitting, video sequencing. That's pretty amazing.
and
Another
then
one I really liked,
oh,
yeah. Hmm?
then the robots, sort of like the entrance of, here come the robots, and that was Bot and Dolly. They were they basically developed this robot and dollying system that the first we caught of it was on the Halo Reach. Halo, there was an ad for the game, but
Yeah,
then
launch
do
for
you
each.
do you remember Box, the film that they did? And it was basically KUKA robot arms with these panels, and G Monk designed the projections. So so it was this ballet of robots moving around with these panels that were being projection mapped, and it was kind
Yeah,
of that was like a big
moving
aha moment.
camera,
Yeah, yeah.
choreographed,
Mm-hmm.
used to make final commercials, but as another way of making final videos is actually use projection mapping on set, again with moving elements. So that led to their work with Gravity, where they're doing a similar kind of thing of coordinating robots, cameras, sound cues, and video. Um, One of the first XR systems, a box of panels, facing into a performer or an actor. So that was a continuity of the original box idea that Bot and Dolly did. Before then, there was, of course, Obscura, because they were the first TouchDesigner users using it on a pretty large scale. So with their team led by Steve Mason, Barry Through, and some others, they did projection of video onto Sydney Opera House. But just before then, they did is a really great projection on the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, which is like a coil-shaped structure, both on the outside with pre-recorded video, but
We
on the
went
inside it
there.
was even,
Yeah.
yeah, one on the inside it was even more interesting because it was for the YouTube Video Awards for 1 year, and there are a whole bunch of awards happening, but there was 8 projectors projecting on the coil of the Guggenheim on the inside, but it was a show control system that was built by Scott Pagano that played and VJ'd visuals during the awards and during music and stuff like that for this whole 1.5 hour event. So it was a combination of loss of projection mapping, a VJ tool, combination with music sync and show control. It was quite a amazing project. So that again set another standard for TouchDesigner use for live events.
Mm-hmm. And then Amin Tobin, that was another big
Mm.
one. If you ask people how they discovered TouchDesigner, especially say 5-10 years ago, most would say Amin Tobin. It was either Rastronaut, Plastic Man, or Amin Tobin. But Amin Tobin, V Squared, Bello Furkhouse, Matt Daly, Peter Systrom. Did you see that? Yeah, did you see that? You didn't see that, huh?
No, no,
Yeah,
I haven't.
we saw it live, but what did Fellow call it? The perspectival illusion. There was this very, very three-dimensional, very sculptural, big form on the stage. Amin Tobin was, in a astronaut suit in the sculpture, and there was projection mapping that was pretty advanced, and this is the sense that from wherever you were in the audience, you were looking at the same thing.
It sounds to me like a lot of the aha moments that you're having are like really when TouchDesigner is brought into the physical, into a large scale, and it's being like, there's simple things technically, a lot of it, but like combined with stages, combined with physical space, it sounds like that is really what changed a lot for you. Or
it's not virtual, it's just like in live events.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, also around the same time as Plastic Man, the 2010 tour, which was the first tie-in of visuals with an early version of Ableton Live, and in a case where the performer Richie Houghton, Plastic Man, he was running the visuals and the music together. They were synced up via Ableton, via OSC to touch and MIDI and stuff. But it was basically a one-man show. And it was great at times during his performance where Rich was actually, usually we play the music and the visuals kind of follow along with it. There's some cases where he was actually playing the visuals and the music just happened to be what it was doing and its connection to the image. So that was another super aha moment, which I was hoping would happen with the musicians at some point. And he was the first guy that I saw do this with Touch, and that was part of his 2010 Plastic Man tour.
A slightly less performative one, but was David Robert at MIT Media Lab. He was working in the robot lab, and he did this really beautiful work called The Never-Ending Drawing Machine. And it was basically two stations with two massive kind of sketchbooks, if you will, with a camera and projector facing down on it. And the idea was of you could collaborate via through distance. So the book would have fiducial markers, and one person at a station would add feathers and paint or write or do whatever to the book, and it would be photographed and basically then projected onto the other book. So theoretically, people collaborate and compose something, through distance.
And when you change the page on your side, the page would change on the other side as well. Stuff like that, because cool. So it was rather amazing. So that was TouchDesigner used that for doing basically media research. So good to see it expanding outside the kind of straight entertainment world.
And Grantacan.
Yeah, the Grantacan again, and well, astronomy as well. That was in two stages. One just for helping visualize what they do there, and explaining their astronomical database, but now more recently at Grantacan for rendering digital doubles for the actual physical telescope,
digital
and
twin,
and tracking what all the sensors and cameras and stuff are doing inside the facility. But I mean, there's even going into the world of theater. Eugene and Jan's theater piece. Maybe Isabelle, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I really it's actually one of my my favorite works with TouchDesigner, Jan and Eugene, Curiosity Media Lab. They were very, very instrumental in growing the Russian community back in like 2012, 2013. They put on tons of workshops. They put on Touch Fest, but they also worked a lot in theater. But they did this really beautiful piece where they were projection mapping on the stage, but it was very black and white and very sort of like minimal. And the dancers were they were sort of using the furniture. There was a table and chair, and they were rotating the table. And as they rotated the table, the entire scenic would flip and change. And it was super well done. And there's a few people working. I mean, Andrew Quinn did a lot of work with he did the 3D opera. Petko Tenchev does a ton of work in in theater and opera. Vlad in at SFU. So it's gaining a lot of ground there as well. Like we see a lot of really nice things happening in the theatric,
Yeah.
and dance.
Yeah. We can't forget Karsten Nikolai with Marcus Heckman.
Yeah, really.
His Unicolor or Unitext show that was premiered at UTEC, where it was 3 HD screens wide, where the visual was the TouchDesigner network interface.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, you're in the
Okay.
land of nodes. So that's what you
Have
see
you
during
seen
the
that?
show.
No,
And
no, I
Oh
haven't.
my
no,
God, that's
it's
still one of my favorite
it's
things.
it's amazing. So
Um,
Carson was working on visuals for his show with Marcus, and he kept on staring at our user interface, going, "I want, but I want to use that. I want to use that as my visual. I don't want to
Hmm.
design something that's already there."
Sort of
So
meta
well,
visual. And
yeah,
check it out,
so
William.
he got
It's
us to add
stunning.
tiny features, but also the way to with a script just to basically zoom into nodes on the network and
ah,
pop out,
yeah,
and yeah,
I have seen that.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that was like, wow,
I
the touch is
remember,
UI use as the visual. So
yeah,
was
that's
it
really, really
was it
cool.
2000,
can't touch that.
2000 and 2008 Transmedial or something like that? We're in the room, and it's full of people, of course, and this visual starts, and people just
Gasps.
yeah, gasp.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was quite new. So there's more, but there's I don't. What about you, Billiam? I mean, what about for
Yeah.
you?
Like my favorite project.
Aha moments
And
for your
yeah, and stuff.
projects,
Yeah, and stuff.
what do you think was really sort of either influential or
Hmm.
instrumental or
Hmm. It's hard to say. I don't think I had this one moment or anything. I was like, okay, aha. It's more like all these small moments when I like the first time I saw TouchDesigner. Actually, the way I discovered TouchDesigner, I tried it first like a year before I actually started, and I was like, I tried for like I don't know a few hours, and I was like, no, I can't do this. It's just
no?
overwhelming. And then a year later, actually, one of my teachers at university showed us in a processing course, and it was like, oh my God, this is what I need to do. Like that was kind of an aha moment. Like, okay, I
Mm,
instantly saw all the potential, like, all these different operator families, and I was, yeah, this is what I've been looking for. And I just really sat down and tried to learn it over a few months. Really, like, it was hard work in the beginning, really, the first
mm,
month, but
Yeah.
absolutely worth it because I really saw what you can do with it. And then
Mm.
things like the meetup last year at the planetarium were also very influential, I would
yeah,
say.
yeah.
And generally just like these moments where I get to meet people, the kind of
Yeah.
the thing is for me, I personally even haven't had that many projects in the sort of physical world, because I
Mm.
started, as I said, right before the pandemic, and then
Mm,
now I was sick for a very long time. So most of what I've been doing has been sort of digital. I have been
right.
traveling, so I was in the first kind of really big project was for Printworks in London, but I didn't actually
Mm.
go there. But that was kind of like,
Mm.
wow, what the hell? Like, during university, kind of like sitting in the back of the class and making something for something way
Cool.
bigger than the
Yeah,
university. And
school.
then
Yeah.
then another thing, was going to Dubai actually during the pandemic, and doing something like on stage that was also really, that pushed me, like not to buy at all. I don't really like to buy, but the whole, like, going somewhere and doing something in a really like professional big space. And yeah, these were these kind of more personal moments, but there were a lot of like, often I had these moments also during meetups. I host these meetups and I see all of these people showing their work, and I had a lot of moments like, oh wow, okay, you can do that, you can think that way, because it's so many different topics that we're covering. So yeah, I don't think it was like this was one thing, but a lot of small things that just kind of
added up.
Added up, and
sure.
just deepened my ambition, and really, in a way, like, sounds cheesy, but love for TouchDesigner, because it's just, I don't know, just seeing what you can do with it, and it's constantly evolving, right? It's like, it's not just the state of the art. Okay, you can do that, but like now we can do 1,000 things more than a year ago. So
yeah. Oh well, we hope we keep making it interesting for you, because
for sure.
what new comes out, I want to make sure it strikes the right chord.
It's almost like, also like, unfortunate that all these aha moments that we pointed out were so revolving around technology in a way. I mean, well, TouchDesigner for one, and then the Connect, or lasers, or robots, or whatever. But I think it was just that ingenuity. Like, you can have all the tools and still not do anything crazy with them, right? I mean, and it doesn't have to be huge, because Vincent Houzé, early on, he was doing these really beautiful, kind of, make these foam core boxes, put them on a motor, rotate them, and project, like tumbling physics, like rocks or whatever, right? So it can be little things, but
exactly.
it's ingenious, right? It's
It's
and also it's
one thing on along the line of that is, like, I don't know, a year ago maybe, somebody posted on Instagram this Dandelion visual, and when you like blew into your microphone, like, it just, there were these kind of particles where all of the and just these very small things, right? You just have to have that idea. It's technically not very difficult. It doesn't have to be at all. But yeah, these are exactly these kind of things that also really inspire me, where I say, like, okay, right, you don't have to like think very abstractly. You just, like, it's very, I don't know, it's simple, but very smart.
It's kind of like the stuff that Raphael at
Hammer.
Anti-Modular does. Does connecting very simple input devices with flying bits of text and stuff like that. Partially physical, partially digital.
Right.
We could go on and on and on this question. So
for sure.
And we've really left out a lot of people, but
yeah. I mean, there's still a few things I'd like to discuss. Right. So I'm just curious, and I think a lot of people are. I also saw that question on Patreon. So what's your daily life like, both as developers and artists and community managers, and I feel like the question is yes, but are you traveling a lot?
We travel frequently to meet people at events and stuff like that, but usually I get pretty saturated after being out for 2 weeks, because I absorb so much and I write so many things down, because I'm kind of a note freak, and I need time to digest and kind of come back, write things down, talk it over with our R&D group, figure out what to do next, and be around long enough to be able to participate in development of stuff. So it's kind of like a ebb and flow of out, get really inspired, back home, quiet, and be pretty methodical about trying to do things. I'm kind of a note-taking nut, and I'm constantly updating to-do lists, and that's kind of like how I really regulate my life, because I really keep bubbling my important things up to the top, both personal things, but also touch designer things. What we literally have thousands of RFEs of what to do next, and each of us at derivative as well. So just juggling and distilling things is like super challenging, but it's pretty good. Sometimes we respond on a whim to something that someone asks us for, and just do it and whatever. And sometimes things take a long time to work out. That may sound easy. So, but day to day, yeah, it's a good question because I might split my day. I usually get up like many night people, work at from 10 o'clock onwards, like the time you really get stuff done. Less interruptions, more concentrated, getting into flow. And some things, of course, that all of us do require a lot of concentration. So you can't tolerate interruptions because I read an IBM report once that any interruption for as little as 5 seconds takes 5 to 15 minutes to come out of. So that's really, bad way of living if you have to do things that take a lot of concentration. So yeah, there's my nighttime life. I often go out, play tennis before then with a couple of times a week, but during the daytime it's all meetings and uh, talking to people in Europe who are going to sleep, and trying to deal with always trying to deal with things around the world, like there's stuff happening in Japan and when does that happen, this part of the night and so on. So it's difficult trying to keep abreast of everybody. But anyway, but it's daytime is for that, and just administering the company and stuff. So unfortunately, we have a good team to run the company together. So it's pretty stable stuff. Isabelle?
Well, exactly. Traveling is a big change, and I personally really, really enjoy it. I love I love going to Berlin and Japan and LA and wherever we go. I just love seeing what people are doing and just the switch up and getting out of the routine. You know what I mean? And then, if you're doing this for a bunch of weeks or even a month, and then you get back, then it's a lot of catching up. But I find that I have a pretty good routine. Like I find that with a job that has you sitting a lot, which is the one thing I don't like, um, I start my day with I'll go swimming. So my day starts with a swim, and then I'll come and I'll work and actually I just ordered a standing desk, so I think that's going to be really helpful. But you know, I'm a person, I have an email, I kind of have to answer it same day kind of thing. So I have that, I want to clear my inbox and I want to get back to people. And at the same time, I'm trying to write articles and organize events and do our Instagram and educational licenses and a lot of things that come up, from the community needing things, or from schools, or from people needing TouchDesigner developers. So there's a lot to sort of organize
Yeah, I bet.
and yeah.
Yeah, you talk about routines. I think that's really a huge problem for me. I've been struggling with that for ever since I've been working as a freelancer, pretty
Yeah.
much. It's super difficult, and obviously the pandemic didn't really help, even though I think I had a better rhythm back then, and then obviously being sick for a very long time doesn't help at all. But generally, I find that very, very difficult, and I feel like some artists too, and also this kind of thing. Like I both want to be a morning person because there's some things that just work really well in the morning, and at the same time, I love being still awake at like 1 a.m. and working on some patches. So both of them have their yeah
Yeah.
have their
Cool.
space, but
Yeah.
they're kind of hard to combine. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I also totally agree with you, Greg, that you really have to be like in this space where you're not like interrupted. And I also noticed that a lot, that I often do need to be actually on my own, and when I'm working, and yeah, so I get really into this flow, because that's when the best things happen, when actually I kind of don't think about it. I just do, and maybe do for hours. So yeah,
Well,
generally, maybe do you have any also advice on building routines?
Maybe you have to get good at taking power naps. So over
Right.
time, maybe it's just age, but I can almost fall asleep on a dime for as little as 3 minutes to 5 minutes, 10, 20 minutes or something like that. But I find that really helps freshness is just to be able to take power naps in the middle of the day. Of course, you have to be around a place where you can do that. But
Right.
I can't power nap,
but
getting
it's
up and
really
walking.
good.
Just
getting up and walking too.
Just like exercise, honestly, like
does help too.
The stupid
For
Apple
sure.
Watch, get up and move for a minute. But more than that, if you can sort of get up and just, look, like for me, like distance, like looking in the distance, breaking that short, that short span of attention, and just walk around the block or go for a longer walk. Like I definitely get some, some good walks, even in the city.
But that makes me want to sleep.
What does?
Taking a
well, then
walk.
you have your power. Then you can have your power. It doesn't me.
Yes.
It gives me a lot of energy. I mean, you can have your power nap right after, but
power nap makes sense actually if I want to be a morning person and a night person.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's
it
true.
Works.
It's a good point. I just have to be careful that it's not too long, and like 2 hours, and then you're really like tired afterwards.
That's what alarm clocks are for.
Right.
So for you, is it a question of your time spent? I mean, because you do many things, right? You make learning, you do the tutorials, you do, the music hack space, the hosting of things. You also do production, you do work for clients, and you do your personal work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the difficulty in finding time for all that, basically.
Yeah, it's not even so much the difficulty of finding time for it, but yeah, I guess structuring my day, and also feeling happy at the end of the day, like feeling like I've really done something and I've achieved something. That's definitely a huge issue for me. I feel like a lot of people are, I have a very different view of me than I have of myself, about how much I actually do and achieve. And I'm sometimes very hard on myself as well. And then, at the end of the day, like when I record a video, for example, I'm very much satisfied at the end of the day. But then there's these kind of tasks, or sometimes, you just do this and then that, and then suddenly the day is over, and you're like, what did I actually do today? So
sometimes it's very hard to measure
your
sometimes very hard to measure your progress, satisfaction.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're working on things that don't really have much of an end to it. So where's the satisfaction moment in that? So so it's tough to juggle it all like that.
Do you keep a sort of a to-do list? Like, do you have a
I've got a Trello.
Track?
I'm using Trello. That really helps. I don't do physical to-do lists that much sometimes, but that's kind of too messy for me. So Trello definitely really helps.
But at least then you can track, right? This is done. You can crop.
Exactly. That's important for sure.
What about my other question for you is what about the idea of co-working? I mean, we just talked about the necessity for silent and quiet environments. Like when I write, I need quiet. But could you split your time between working by yourself and working with a group of people, like a co-working space or something? Would that help?
Maybe. I mean, I used to work at the Node Institute co-working space for like around half a year. And for a time that was really good, especially it was also in the pandemic time, and I just at home, I couldn't be at home anymore. So it was super important to like go out and to go somewhere. And I think that's one of the huge perks as well. Like you go outside of your own space to work, and then you come back and, work is done. And I think that's also kind of an issue that I have sometimes with my work. It's both a blessing and a curse. My hobbies and my work are almost kind of the same. So at least they really like go go together. So sometimes I'm missing that when I'm working from home, you know, like you having that endpoint, like, all right, now I'm done. I'm not really good at like saying, okay, I'm done now. And then you're on Instagram and you're writing people, and then still it's work, but it's not work. And you never really, it's kind of hard to say.
You're not off. Yeah, you're not off.
I mean, I like working with people, but like on specific projects, but I don't think it would help me much. I also noticed that working with lovely people around me, right? And Node Institute, it was really not the people's fault, but I just noticed I do like to be alone. And then when I want to meet people, that's like kind of outside work usually. But now I'm curious. I mean, I'm going to go to Bali for 5 weeks or a month. We're going to do a project together with like Stefan, Nima, Ploys, Marta. So it's a really cool team, and we're going to be working together all the time. So I'm very curious how that affects me and how that's going to feel like in a completely different space as well.
I look forward to the updates.
Yeah.
Well, get around the island too.
Yeah. I'm at least I
have
a week afterwards at least, so can go around a bit. But like, it's going to be a lot of work, but great work. So I'm also curious, as we're kind of talking about it, Greg, how many like personal projects are you doing? Or it's probably, I guess, the same thing as for me. It's kind of blending. It's hard to say what's personal and what's not, but
I mean, I have a folder of about 50 projects that are on and off, but there's 10 main ones kind of thing, and they're all kind of related to, well, a lot of them are just, some of them are just video tricks and experiments, but I have like four kind of VJ tools that are in different stages of development and life, because I make one and I say, well, now I want one that does this instead, kind of thing. Because like, for instance, the fact that there are a lot of different types of VJing tools out there is, to me, really great, because there's no one perfect way of running a show or it's really a personal thing. The fact, I heard that 440 is coming out with a new version of Z-Error or something, which is Zeror. So that, to me, their first version was really good. It's very, like, it was their thinking and their style built into that one tool, and I thought that's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to the next one. And I have, like, I have this one thing called Mixa, which is like 7 channels doing things in columns of effects kind of thing, which is more structured. And then I wanted to do something that was really unstructured, which is now what I call VJ Kit, which is you're working half the time in the network and half the time in this user interface that's kind of trimmed down. So I really like that. And I had another one called Movie Grid Browser, which is more for giving presentations and improvised presentations of our work, which is basically a touchscreen jumping to different user projects and videos. So that was another one, and a few other smaller bits and pieces that I've come to make a separate VJ project, but they all stall because there's something vitally missing in them. And fortunately, I'm in a position where I can wait for and help direct R&D team to install it. Sometimes it's just bugs. Sometimes it's just a feature that I need, that, like, I just need one little thing to get this far. And so I can kind of stall and wait for it. But some things that stall a long time is, like, for instance, cloning, which is now, the bigger project gets, the more you need cloning. And we're in the middle of like a 2 or 3 year project to completely redo cloning and TouchDesigner. Well, not completely, but make it way better. It'll be out this year in the next experimental, we expect. And that's what a lot of my other tools are my tools are kind of waiting for. The fact that and the other thing that causes a lot of revision is when new features come out and you think, oh, so when custom parameters came out, everything went from chops and tables on the inside of something to custom parameters on the outside of a component. That was a huge change in my whole thinking. Then there's binding, connecting parameters to stuff on the inside. Internal parameters had some big effect on the way I design things too. So for all of them, going back and re-engineering them with the new way of doing things is again a huge delay on everything. And then the new thing that just came out, the having blocks of custom parameters, I think will really open the door to stuff that people don't know. I think we don't know how powerful they're going to be for people, but again, it'll affect the way I design stuff. So a lot of it is like back and forth on major projects. But yeah, I do have my one folder of Greg projects, and then those are attempts to make designy things, and then another folder of about 100 test projects for my role as in the test department, trying to break things and stuff like that. So that's kind of like the structure of my TouchDesigner side projects. And unfortunately, in that mode, I never get a chance to properly VJ again. Before, VJing was taking 2 VHS players, maybe a Betacam player, one honking big PC or Silicon graphics machine, a MX50 video mixer, and then to a party or whatever, and just using tapes and stuff like that, and mixing some live generative stuff. That was kind of easy. But now, I'm reliant on more and more intricate tools to do the same thing. So I don't really get out to VJ enough. And sometimes I just take some bits and pieces from our user community and just put them in a network and seeing what I can do with throwing a couple of things together, like taking something from Piquetta and something from here, and just trying stuff out in very granular way. I really like doing that because there's a lot of happy accidents happens when you just throw shit together and see where it comes out. And usually it's better with where your audience isn't very discriminating as far as quality, downtime, how slow things change, or how whatever. So that's enough.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's enough. Yeah.
Thank you. One last question about the kind of personal. Very curious what it's like to work with your partner.
Yeah.
You're both in the same room as well. We kind of talked about that. Yeah, I can do that like for a certain amount of time, but not always. And generally, you're working in the same company and very close together. So what's that like?
You want to go, Greg? I want to hear what you're going to say.
Sure, I'll answer. It's super refreshing all the time because Isabelle joined Derivative kind of as a curiosity kind of thing. She was curious about our artist community, and she realized that there were a lot of missing parts to our company, like the social media connection just wasn't there. We were all heads down developing product. So she started engaging with everybody, and like even now she just brings all sorts of like fresh thoughts and just some different design sense to the company. So it's really refreshing too. And she really helps organize our time, the company's time, my time and stuff for events and stuff like that, and brings to my attention so many great works from our users that she says, "Oh, look what so and so did, and look what so and so did," and while my head's down developing stuff, it's just great seeing her breadth of vision in the whole thing. So it's pretty 100% complimentary to me.
It's great to hear.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it's definitely a shared passion, not just the tool and the development of the tool and what people are making with the tool, but again, this whole community thing, right? It's sort of inescapable. In a way, it's our extended family. So it's something that we share. And I mean, I often look at people like there's a tendency in our TouchDesigner community, when you're a TouchDesigner person, you are so TouchDesigner. It's like you may come up for air sometimes, but could you imagine actually running the entire company and the development? And so in a way, it's great to be able to have our different different parts that are obviously very that work together.
Well, we also
And
have
also
no,
similar interests, right? Music, art, design.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was about to say, because where did we need? Was it craft work, or was it
Yeah.
Robert Henke?
Henke or yeah.
What's it? Or one of those things. And so we have no. We both like the same kind of music, techno, drum and bass.
Mhm.
I like house more than Isabelle does, unfortunately. But all that, but still, there's a lot of and just art in general,
Yeah, yeah,
curiosity in general. So it's that makes it easy.
Mhm. Yeah,
great.
and we kind of I get up earlier and he stays up later. So
We never
Mhm.
really see each other, so
oh no,
it doesn't matter.
there's a whole in between part,
Overlaps to
but
like
I
1 hour and
Yeah, yeah, just
but
a
I can
couple of
see that
minutes.
it's really nice. Like when I wake up early and I can do my thing and go swimming and come
hmm
back and you're still, it's just like I find like I could be a grumpy person in the morning and just having I don't know what it would be like having to deal with someone talking to me every morning. I don't think I could
right.
handle it. So
I
Mm.
totally feel that, yeah.
Mm.
All right. So I think now for sort of the last part of the podcast, it would be nice to move into the future. And I want to know where do you think Touch Designer is heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Obviously, AI is a big part of it. From my standpoint, I think it'll help our users learning Touch Designer, but also building networks and building art pieces, but just like AI assisted use of Touch Designer. Like up to now, it's not very accessible in one way, a couple of ways, because our TOE files are binary, so AI can't get in there, and also, yeah, like our snippets are kind of closed off in the same ways, but also once we get it with our next file format, which is ASCII based and stuff like that, I think there'll be more tools, including those that we build, that will help AI assisted learning and development a lot more. So as the software gets more complex, it'll help people build Touch Designer projects more. So then there's many other sides of it too, because people are using AI on the outside to generate images that come into Touch and are used to, further from there and so on. People are using AI tools to make obviously amazing things, and they're having great fun with it. So but so much of what we see, we get sick of really quickly, right? Downside of AI tools is there's kind of a loss of personal ownership of what you make, and there's also a loss of where things come from. In the past, you kind of knew who your influences were, artists by name or bands by name, or um,
now it's
sources by
AI's
name.
by name. It's just
Yeah,
AI's by name, Greg.
yeah, right. So now it's all kind of mushed together, and so I don't know what that effect will have on people where they don't really know directly about history of art. There's Wikipedia for sure. Wikipedia's been my friend for ages, and I just love it. But just that to have stuff made for you and not knowing where it came from is kind of weird. But anyway, but certainly people will and have use AI for helping them design and make stuff. So
hmm
that's really encouraging to see. So we have to figure out what's the best ways that Touch Designer can fit into that world. A lot of our users have gone ahead and done their own things. We haven't done it fast enough because there's a lot of Python issues in terms of conflicts and libraries and dependencies that make it difficult for to integrate it all uniformly in Touch. But that's what we're working on a lot now, is the Python environment for supporting large external systems.
hmm
So that's that you'll see kind of that evolving over the next little while. But when you say 5 to 10 years, I can barely think 5 to 10 months.
Sure, sure.
How do you think Moore's law is affected by AI? Right? Because the idea that, okay, Moore's law, the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years, even though the cost of computers is halved. Basically, like I've also thought of Moore's law in the way that everything accelerates, right? But there was, I think, a fairly conservative, okay, so doubles. But wouldn't AI have changed that a great deal? I mean, like, don't you see things accelerating more?
Hmm.
Like more
I
change per.
For sure. I do for sure. Yeah. It feels incredible. Like as I said earlier, like every month or every week almost feels like there's a new tool.
Yeah.
That's already like twice as or 10 times as fast than before. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was for me, it was kind of this thing before, like like in summer I was kind of working in between being sick. I was
Mm-hmm.
working on Stable Diffusion, this last tool that Dot Simulate made back then, and it took me like, I don't know,
Yeah.
4 to 5 seconds to make one frame, and now I'm like working with 10 FPS.
Mm.
So it's like it's insane. It's not even half a
Yeah.
year, and
Yeah.
it's
That's
such a
right. That's right. Eh?
huge progress. Yeah.
That's right. That's a good measure of what FPS you're getting out of
Hmm.
your interactions with Stable and others. Yeah. So it's like Moore's law in a way is happening again,
And also, like
even
when you
better.
think of, like, again, the Industrial Revolution, this whole idea that, automation would set us free, right? That we would have much more leisure time, more time for intellectual pursuit, and so on and so forth. However, like with AI, sure, ChatGPT can help me write something, and all these, AI can help, make beautiful scenics for film, or I mean, it's endless, the capabilities. But it's do I'm kind of doubtful that it's going to liberate us. I think it's going to give us, you know, we'll just have to work faster to
Yeah.
keep up.
Yeah, it's really both for me. It's so ambivalent. It's like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. For me, it's at the same time right now. I'm very, very excited about it because I
For
feel
sure.
like I can really now stream diffusion and sort of almost real time on even my laptop. I feel like I can really, really put my visions into
Yeah.
and like externalize them and realize them, and it's really closer and closer to what I actually want to create with Touch
Wow.
Designer.
Okay.
But at the same time I'm like, yeah, where the hell is this going? And like, are we gonna be replaced? That's also why I'm so curious to hear from you, as you're so, both of you, so deep into this scene and the art scene generally, what your feelings are towards it, and how do you think we can adapt, and if you think we're going to be replaced as artists or not.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I'm not that deep into the AI question. I mean, philosophically, I think about it, of course. Also, the whole notion of tools, right? We've had all kinds of tools for, you know, since we've had like a flint or whatever.
Hmm.
So people have always used tools differently. Some people have made really, like, so-called, if you want to start, being critical, really brilliant work, and some people have made a whole, like, not brilliant work. Um,
Hmm.
but I think, like, we always say, okay, so with tools, you got imagination, right? So, like, how do you use your tools? How much practice do you have using your tools? And I think with AI, what's going to sort of manifest is that we're going to have to start asking, like, really, really, really smart questions. We're going to have to, like, refine, I think, our critical thinking, because I think it's going to be how we think that will get us sort of the novel and
Hmm.
the sort of important results, right? Versus, I mean, I think basically, like, we're going to have to really, really work on our thinking.
So I have a question for you, William. When Touch Designer is able to build networks for you, how do you think that will change the way you work? Does that mean you don't have to learn how to use a math shop? It'll do it for you, and you can do
Hmm.
other things?
I don't know. That's kind of, for me, that's not the way I've been thinking about AI. That it creates the whole network for me. I'm not the person, I'm not the art director. I don't just want to be the art director. I'm more of the person that realizes and executes. So
Crafts person.
and a lot of things for me in my personal work happen in the process. But
Yeah,
barely
right. That's a
ever
good
do I
point.
actually create something that I wanted to create. It's something like I have a point and like
Wow.
an idea
Yeah.
in my head, but it's always a starting point. And then I
Yeah.
sit
Yeah.
down and I
Oh
try
yeah.
something. It's either like an idea I had or a new technique or whatever. Now it's like this whole AI business that I'm
Yeah.
trying out, but it's
Yeah.
barely ever like the outcome's barely ever that what I imagined, but things just happen sort of often by accident or by just exploring. So I don't want to give that away, actually. I want to keep exploring. I don't just want to tell
Authorship,
an
yeah.
AI like, do this and that, or but
Mm-hmm.
I do like the integration in that way that I can, I've now integrated Stream Diffusion just as another operator into
Oh yeah.
a feedback system. And that just, that opens a whole new world. And in that way, I really love it because it's
Yeah.
just making it super interesting. It just expands, but I don't want it to replace me as the
No.
executing force in a way.
Right.
Do you do,
But
do,
you
do
could
you
always
find
tweak things and intervene and add
Yeah,
to it and basically
sure.
back and forth a bit kind of thing.
I
It's
mean,
just kind of the way
maybe.
people.
but does AI give your work a certain look, or can you still keep your
I feel like
billion?
I can. And that's actually something you also said earlier that you're getting tired of a lot of AI stuff. And I feel that totally. And also, even just as an example, when you look for models online, there's a Civet AI website, I think. Pretty much
Mm-hmm.
90% of the stuff is all just anime. And I just don't understand. Like,
Mm,
a lot of the stuff I see also on social media, it all looks the same. And I
Mm-hmm.
really, really don't understand
totally.
that because
Yeah.
I feel like with AI, you can literally do anything. It's the
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
most powerful
Yeah.
tool we've had
Mm-hmm.
ever, pretty much, like with the
Mm-hmm.
internet,
Yeah.
maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's so weird that people don't use that a lot of the time. Obviously, there's very, very innovative stuff, but I feel like that's maybe 5%.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is just following what everybody else is doing. But I do feel like, especially integrating it like that and not just using it, I'm just prompting stuff, but I am
Mm-hmm.
creating like composition and colors
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm using feedback. So
Drafting.
it's
Yes.
integrated into the
Yeah.
already existing workflow that I've built
Mm-hmm.
up over the last 5 years.
Exactly.
So in
Yeah.
that way, I
That's.
do think that I can still keep my style.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do see a lot of
Copy
work that's
paste.
very copy
Yeah.
paste, and that's really not
Mm-hmm.
not original. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
really wondering why that is. Because you
Mm-hmm.
have so many possibilities with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a choice.
I think it's people who will just kind of pick up something because it's a fad and they can do it, and they'll
Right.
do it, and then they'll do something else. I hope.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe it's just a
Yeah.
phase.
It's analogous to presets on a synthesizer. Some presets are cool
Right.
and you use them that, or you might use it for certain things, but building something bigger out of it, kind of thing. So is it
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
somewhat
It's tool.
similar
It's
to
a
that?
tool. It's a
It's a
tool,
tool.
and
It's
it's
an incredibly
yeah.
powerful tool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's hard to say even call art made by AI because there's so many different ways how you can use it as an assistant, as you said, Greg,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
kind of builds networks or learns from networks. And
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, a part of me is sort of, I wouldn't say afraid, that would be too big of a word, but certainly there's a weird feeling about, also me being like a
Sure.
person that teaches how to make these kind of networks. And at some point you can just tell the AI how to do it. But I guess we all need
yeah,
to be very flexible anyways and just adapt to what's happening. And
Yeah.
right now, the state of what it is right now, I'm very positively excited about it on my personal level, how I can work with it. But I
mm-hmm.
really don't know like where it's going to be in a year or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, hard to say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, think of I don't know. I don't want to digress too much here, but if you think of the invention of a certain technology, and okay, like let's say something that didn't exist and then exists and then enables, but then it, say a calculator, right? Like do you have to add more after the calculator is invented than you did before? Does reality change, to sort of reflect the tools that exist? I think it kind of does. In which case, and that's what you're kind of asking, like in a way, our reality is going to change a lot so that we actually really, really, really need to use these AIs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, using them judiciously and using them creatively and using them
consciously,
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I do think I mean, it's certainly sort of a new state of of the art now. And I feel like people who don't want to use it are gonna have a difficult time, which is not a very positive thing. And yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. Still have a weird feeling sometimes using it. Also, as you said, Greg, you don't really know where that stuff is coming from, what it's trained on. It's not very transparent.
Kind of big mush of history.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it's not as intransparent, but I already feel like that when I'm using TouchDesigner, it's a lot of the stuff in there is made by you guys. It's made by your team. So it's always
our pre-thought.
it's already been the question before I like where does my work start and where does yours end, right? Or also from other people from the community, everybody building components or watching tutorials of other people, and like, yeah, what's really my work? And I think that question hasn't really changed. It's just become even more saturated or something.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the new Creative Commons, I mean, you've basically like for your work, like I could credit so much in pretty much everything that I do, right? Like whether it's if I made music, I can trace back, all the influences, right? Or so there's attribution everywhere, I guess. And I mean, the idea of doing something that doesn't involve anybody else's work is like really hard to think of.
Yeah, pretty much impossible.
Yeah, it's all what's that word? Derivative.
You don't say.
Oh, gee.
We could probably go on with this forever, but we're already at the 2 hour mark. So I think we can slowly come to an end, right? There's two last questions I wanted to ask you. And one is very concrete about your plans for 2022, both personal and for derivative. It's
2024?
2024, yeah. That's what did I say 2022 maybe?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, no.
Okay.
2024. Yeah. What are your
Exactly
plans
the
for
same
this
as
year?
2022.
Oh
No,
yeah,
I
no.
hope not.
Please no.
No, definitely not. Like I said, I think things are just sort of really ramping up. Like there's there's a lot going on. For a fact, we know we're Montreal, MUTEC Montreal will be celebrating its 25th anniversary in August, and we definitely plan on doing like a meetup, not a summit, no summit, more like a meetup at that time. We're also kind of doing more meetups sort of around, like say in Montreal, we want to do sort of a quarterly for a year. We're definitely going to come back to Europe at some point. Can't say more about that one.
Other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On the TouchDesigner side, well, you probably all know about a bunch of things we've announced of revamped cloning and also the new TOE file format, which is heavily in demand. The JSON like version that's friendly with Git. So that's coming. And our infrastructure for hooking into, well, basically AI tools and other tools is being worked on constantly. Also, we're working on making Python threadable, so you can have multiple Python threads to do stuff more in parallel as well. And we are going to do another round of improvements to the learn.derivative.ca this year. And we got a bunch of stuff coming up that we can't talk about yet, but we're excited this year for a whole bunch of things. And and whatever comes our way in terms of influences from you guys, because we definitely get steered by things that come our way. So
Sure.
plenty of that, yeah.
And we just talked about AI, and more concretely, is there any kind of tools in that direction that you want to include? You've included something like the upscaler, which I actually already use. It's quite amazing. Things like that.
Yeah. Well, there's a new Oak camera, which has a time of flight camera in it, so the Oak D tools will get a little bit better based on that as well. The more NVIDIA stuff that their AI Maxine stuff, body track here and there, getting better and stuff like that. But they're pretty minor things.
I was just going to say, on a personal level, which also includes work, I would like to visit communities in different parts of the world. So when people in different parts of the world hear this, someone wanted to know about starting VJ using TouchDesigner setup. The people part, which collaborations, setting up with the DJ, TD logistics. Yeah. Remember that hack space, William, where you were asking, there was Crystal, there was, I can't remember, a bunch of people just talking about how they work. Like, I reposted that in community. I think that's something to keep sort of promoting, because people have these questions all the time. How do I start?
About jobs and freelancing, right?
Yeah, not
Yeah, that
just
was a
the
really great
resources,
discussion.
not just the resources for learning TouchDesigner, but how do I
to
show
go
my
about doing
work?
it.
How do I get a show in a gallery? How do I, so, if chances are in a good art school, a good design program, you'll learn, you'll get some of those resources. But in our community, I think it's really good to keep sharing that stuff, because it's not as apparent.
Totally. That's always my number one advice, or like two advices, like share all your work all the time, and
man,
and write people, especially in this community, and just reach out to people. People are really open.
Yeah. I remember that being one of the main messages of it. Share all your work, communicate, even with people just getting going, not just people who admire, but everybody. Yeah. Which reminds me too, actually, which is one of your questions, which I didn't answer. The question was, what challenges do you have with your user community? And one of them is that getting the work that our users make, i.e. their tools, their components, and certainly their tutorials and stuff like that, getting that out to the rest of the world in the hands of other people. People make a lot of really great things, but number one, they kind of get buried eventually, and also the other issue is that they might get a little bit obsolete because better ways of making things appear. So it's kind of a challenge for us to kind of get that work back out to everybody else, and so that's something I intend on making improvements on.
Right.
I think we are, William, correct me if I'm wrong, but trying to wrap things up because of the time, or
Oh,
or
yeah,
what do
yeah,
you
yeah.
think?
Sorry.
Wait.
Gotta
You're not done, right?
gotta wrap it off, I guess. So thank you for coming, and thank you for watching, everybody. And just to the viewers, if you have any feedback, I'm very open for any kind of feedback, if there's anything that you would like me to add or change. And also, if you want to be on here, if you want to talk to me, just feel free to reach out. And thank you so much, Isabelle and Greg, for coming here and talking to me.
Yeah, great
pleasure
to be on with you.
And thank you, William, so much for honestly, like, you've done so much for community. And as I said in the beginning, your name comes up all the time, and as one of the key people that people learn from. And so thank you for that. It's
very
priceless.
welcome. It's really my pleasure. It's lovely. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So
all right, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.